You join me today, folks, at the stunning Boston Lake. Now, this venue needs no introduction. It's a beautiful day, and it's the perfect opportunity for me to give you my top 5 winter method feeder tips. Tip number 1 is all about feeders and feed pellets, what we're actually going to cast to these fish and hopefully trick them into taking our hook bait. So, first things first, we need to scale down our feeder size. I'm using a small hybrid feeder today. We'll talk about the differences between hybrid feeders and method feeders and the presentations they offer in another video, I think. But for today, a small hybrid feeder is doing the business. Now, importantly, I've not gone really heavy on the weight. I want to make as small a plop on the water surface as possible. Obviously, we're treading that balance between getting the feeder to the spot. We're chucking over 50 metres today, between 50 and sort of like 65 metres has been the line we're chucking at. And we want to make sure we can get the feeder there, but importantly, it needs to land really softly on the surface. The venue we're fishing today, Boston Lake, it's only very shallow. We don't want a big feeder crashing in and risk spooking those fish. So, I've gone for the 24 gram feeder. Obviously, if there was a little bit of wind, we'd maybe go to the 30 grammer, but a 24 gram feeder is getting me to the distance. Now, to help me do that, I've got a nice light line on the reel. I've got 4-pound M-Tech line on the reel. I can't cast this feeder that distance without using a shock leader of some description. So I've gone for, I actually do it differently. I use 6 big arm spans of shock leader, and I peel that off the spool and then tie that with a 4-turn water knot to the main line. Creates a lovely little knot, and the shock leader material is 12-pound M-Tech. I don't skimp on the shock leader. I want to make sure that if I do have to put a heavier feeder on, I can get it there. But that light 4-pound M-Tech means that I can use a nice light feeder, less drag on the reel lip, through the eye rings, obviously less drag as it's sinking through the water as well after the feeder's landed, and it means I can use that nice light feeder. Importantly, talking about feed pellets, just because I'm using a small feeder and offering a small parcel of bait, I'm not using small pellets. In the wintertime, quite often you're not building a bed of feed, you're casting around. And what I want to do is leave as few particles on the lake bed as possible after each cast. So, I'm using 3mm pellets as feed. Now, a lot of people would use 2mm, but you can see these 3mm swim stim pellets, they swell up to a really nice big size, and when I cast out and obviously hopefully reel back with a fish, I'm guessing that some of those pellets are getting eaten by the fish that I catch, but also I'm leaving fewer particles behind, and that means that there's less danger in the area. Fish at this time of year, they don't want to settle over a big bed of bait. Obviously, they probably regard it with a little bit of danger. So by leaving less particles in the swim, I think we're giving ourselves a chance of keeping the fish there for longer. While on the subject of end tackle, I think it's really important to talk about the hook length and the hook length materials. So, Boston, we all know there's some huge fish in here. We want to make sure those big fish come out. So it means using robust tackle. Again, we're striking that balance though between making our rig appealing enough for those skimmers, those F1s that we know there's loads of those fish in this venue, but being strong enough to get those big fish out. So our end tackle reflects that. The hook length material I'm using today is 014. Now during the summer months I'd be using something like 018, 020, obviously really robust, but I'm using 014 today. Now that's where I think the balance is. I think if I really take my time, I've got a chance of getting a really big fish out on 014. If I was on another venue where there wasn't so many big fish, I'd be using even 012 on a method feeder. I don't see any issue with that. What I'm looking to do is create a really nice, supple hook length. I think it's the suppleness of the hook length which helps hook your fish and it helps get you more bites, especially at this time of year. So a nice supple hook length means that you're going to get more bites. That's without a doubt. It keeps your hook bait closer to your feed, and it makes it easier for the fish to engulf your bait and hopefully make a mistake. Now, just because I've gone light on the hook length doesn't mean I've scaled down the hook. I'm using a size 10, and you can see I've got a little bayonet on the hair. That's because I'm using mini boilies or wafters or wowsers, whatever you want to call them, as a hook bait. If I was using maggots, obviously I want to scale that hook down a little bit. But for mini boilies, wowsers, wafters, you know, whatever you want to call them, you need a big hook. You need enough hook there to be bigger than the actual size of the boiler. So the gape of the hook needs to be bigger than the gape of the boiler. That means the hook's got a lot more chance of catching hold in the fish's mouth. Obviously, we're relying on this method to hook the fish for us. It needs to be a self-hooking method. So the light line and big hook combo is a real winner. One last thing to touch on is the length of the hook length. Fish aren't charging around at this time of year, and I'm a big believer in short hook lengths anyway when I'm method feeder fishing or hybrid feeder fishing. So I'm using a 2-inch hook length. We're targeting all different species today. There's some big bream in here, some F1s, neither of which tend to move very far when they suck a bait in. So 2-inch hook length, light line, big hook, that is the winning combo for me. Where you cast obviously has a massive bearing on whether you're going to be successful or you're going to fail at your winter method feeder fishing. Now, Boston is a classic open water feeder scenario. Now, today we're pleasure fishing. It's a winter's day, we've got loads of space, we could cast all over the swim if we want to. But usually in a match situation or if the lake's really busy, you'll have anglers all around you, you'll have limited space to chuck to, you'll have anglers on the far bank, and you've really got to think about your session. Because what we want to do is we want to hit that honey hole, we want to hit that shoal of fish where those fish have probably naturally settled. We want to hit those fish at the right time of day. And usually that's sort of mid-afternoon. You know that in the winter time, we've had some cold mornings, those fish are just not going to feed in the morning. It's going to be mid-afternoon time when maybe the water temperature's just risen a degree or two, and those fish just maybe get in a bit of a feeding mood. So we want to hit that pod of fish at the right time of day. And that's when we're going to make the most out of the swim. So what I want to do is imagine where those fish are going to end up at that crucial part of the day. Now, quite often during the winter time, those fish are going to be as far away from anglers as possible, and that means down the middle of the lake. If I drew an imaginary line down the middle of this lake, it'd probably be at about 65 metres, something like that. What I don't want to do is cast that point straight away. So I use the measuring sticks at the start, and I'll probably end up starting at about 50 metres. That gives me 15 metres of clear water. I can inch my way out. Maybe I might catch a few fish early on at 50 metres. A few lucky bonus fish, they're always welcome. But if I inch my way out, maybe a metre at a time, 2 metres at a time, hopefully, if I get my timings right, I'll hit that 65 metre mark, that place where I think those fish are going to be holed up at the middle part of the day when the water temperature's just risen a little bit. I'll hit it bang at the right time. And that, I think, is crucial for winter method feeder fishing, being on the fish at the right time of day. Just like any style of fishing, obviously your hook bait is massively important. And when it comes to method feeder fishing or hybrid feeder fishing, I think small is best. I've tried all different sorts of hook baits over the years, big boilies, big pellets on the on the hook. I think the small bait, it works brilliantly. After all, you're feeding small pellets around the feeder. You want the fish to almost pick it up as a byproduct of sucking those feed pellets in. So a small, light hook bait is the way to go. Now, open water where you're fishing for a mixture of species usually revolves around fishing mini boilies or wafters or wowsers. And for me, there's one bait that sort of fits the bill on nearly every venue I go to when it's this sort of style of fishing, when we're fishing harder baits, and it's these. I've got a pot of 5mm wowsers. Even though I'm using that big hook, I'm fishing for potentially big fish. I think a 5mm bait is perfect. So yellow is my go-to colour. If I could pick one colour, it would be yellow. I know some venues you can use a white or a pink or red or whatever colour you want, but I think yellow suits sort of like nearly every single venue. So they're soft enough to pin or to put on the bayonet, and all you've got to do is before every cast, you've just got to make sure with a tub of water that it's sitting correctly. And by sitting correctly, I mean the wowser is sitting upright with the hook laying flat on the bottom. That for me means there's enough buoyancy in that hook bait for it to shoot up in a fish's mouth when a fish has a suck at that pile of feed or at that hook bait. Obviously there's some weight in the hook to obviously catch hold and hook the fish for me. Now tip number 5 might not seem that important, but to me it's massive, and I think it makes a huge difference to your results, especially in the winter time. And that is keeping a straight quiver tip, keeping your tip as straight as possible and your line as slack as possible while still be able to see a bite. I think by slackening off after you've cast out, you laying your line on the bottom behind that feeder, you're less likely to move your feeder with any toe on the water. There's less vibrations going down the line, and also your tip is at its most sensitive when the tip's slack. So it just means that I'm able to read the tip a lot easier. And if I'm getting the odd little line bite on the tip, I'm able to see it. And obviously in the winter, finding the fish is really important. So being able to see a few little line bites, maybe it's just a fish swims through your line, is going to help you locate the fish and maybe give you an idea of where you're going to cast to next.